So this is just going to be a deep dive into some of my metaphysical thoughts today. Now, the nature of abstract objects and why abstract objects exist across the omniverse is a fascinating and mind-boggling question. It basically goes back to the notion of why does abstraction exist at all, and why does abstraction need to praxeologically exist pragmatically for the human mind to fully actualize itself with self-actualization, both in an Adlerian and Shakespearean and Franklian sense. I mean, for sure, the world of abstraction versus the world of nominalism, they may not be so compatibilistically unchained together, kind of if this kind of centrifugal diffusion. There may be more of kind of a concrete onticity or ontology, pan-ontology relation between the set of all abstract objects and the set of nominalistic objects. It's just a matter of, is quantum reality more nominalistic or is it more objectively abstractive in terms of the full kind of etiology of every possible property that a person can ever possess. Now, it's like, it is a good question of how many possible properties the human mind can ever potentially perceive, not just in this world, but all of possible and impossible worlds. And it becomes kind of a question of what it means to vindicate the human soul, the human psyche, into the pure panactual kind of philosophical realm where only abstraction is known to exist. And I think that, panpsychism, cosmopsychism, and the notionality of the mind on jungle in the Platonic realm is for sure a very, very intriguingly one. It's a very riveting one. It's a very ravishing, rigorous one that challenges certainly many kind of domains of ontological dogma that may kind of precede the thinking experiments that one can kind of effably conceive of. So I think that the notion of quantum chromodynamics also autophagically treating infections like cancer would be perfect. The first time the precancerous cell becomes RNA or DNA kind of malfunctioning or malwired in kind of its binding of the nucleotide bases, then that's when we got to really use the autophagy or correct the whole system, correct the whole circuitry. There's got to be a way to control the CPU of kind of the programming, ontological programming, Zoltan programming of one's cells. And likewise, with schizophrenia, it may be just a matter of reprogramming the cerebral cortex and temporal lobe and prefrontal cortex to kind of mitigate the buffering of psychonic noise and rather just have the fluidity of beautiful visual and visionary thoughts. So I think that certainly transhumanism has gone a long way in aspiring the human psyche into what it knows best, which is the ultimate metaphysical ascension up the Klondikes of the omniverse, where only pure actualized visionary potential is unleashed into the metaphysicality branching of all possible possibilism and all possible modal possibilism across every possible and impossible world. So I think that certainly now, do I believe in an Pan-Platonic reality, quantum reality, or do I believe in a pan-nominalistic quantum reality? Well, I think that I'm compatibilistic dialethically with both models, depending on the Hegelian kind of intrapole you choose. So in one world it might favor this model, and in another world it might favor that model, according to dialectical realism. Now, in possible worlds where dialectical realism doesn't exist, it becomes a question of what it probably ideologically existed first, like chicken or egg, the Pan-Platonism or the Pan-Nominalism. Well, truth is that I can only speculate that it could be either dialectic or non-dialectic. Now, which is closer to the most objective Hegelian orthobonic reality is unknown. It may be only experienced kind of idealistically and vitalistically and vicariously through the ones we love as we metaphysically make love to all the actualizations and the pluralisms of possible thoughts, possible mental objects, possible dreams, possible qualia that can never flourishly exist within the temple of one's mind and cortex forever, eternally, sempiternally. So anyways, I think that the set of all sempiternity somehow governing a human kind of human supervenience would also be quite fascinating. It's certainly a proven notion of what it means to his pan-semantic nihilism versus pan-semantic meaningfulness, both in a subjective and objective sense and reference, can certainly give way to not only neo-Quineanism and neo-Quinean self-critiques against its own analyticism, but also Eastern hyperphenomenology, kind of bridging this mediumistic gap, this continental analytical gap between these two worlds, and realism not so terribly unchained together. They're more the womb of a substance monist twin, theology and philosophy, or onticity and anti-ontology, or dialeiphism and non-dialeiphism, and etc., regarding the Platonic and non-Platonic omniverses. So I think that the question of whether the Platonic or non-Platonic omniverse exists could be due to Kaluza-Klein theory, quantum chromodynamics. It could be due to another quantum union synergistic psychophysics out there. But regardless of whatever model you choose, the one thing is for sure is that you can plug in both hyperplatonism and hypernominalism and choose your kind of modus operandi of omniversal mereological aggregates, given whatever world you choose. So in that sense, it's dialectically realist. Now, whether that's a Hegelian dialectic, I don't know. I mean, it could be mind independently Hegelian, it could be mind dependently. But I just want to know from you folks, what do you think is the ultimate ideology of all Platonism and all versus all nominalism across the omniverse in terms of self-sufficing as a prime mover of ever ideologies that might come out of it? And why do rationality often subjectively and objectively transcend both the mind-independent and mind-dependent Platonic and nominalistic realms? Why do the Platonic and nominalistic realms make sense, even mereologically, atomistically, for both models, dialectically and dialectically? And finally, why is abstraction somehow a modus operandi of the philosopher, rather than the philosopher as a modus operandi of the thinking abstraction, as it pan-Meinongianly perceives itself autopoetically and homunculistically? Now, anyways, thank you so much, and I hope this brightens your day, and certainly serves as solace in solitude, and kind of the quaternary beauty of all the abundance of abstracta that one can human or Berkeley never perceive and premonition and perceptive eyes is a good question. Perceptivism versus perspectivism, both in a pan-Nietzschean and say pan-Whiteheadian or George Santayana sense. So I think that the notion of the ultimate ideology of all possible abstraction versus all possible concretion or nominalization isn't so much a one that's rigid and designated that dualistically across all possible worlds. It might actually be more anomalous than substance anomalous monist than one thinks, kind of the absolute monism of Parmenidean realities versus the absolute monism of Pythagorean or Heraclitean realities. I mean, and how it all ties back to the Platonic versus the nominalistic realm. So I think that I hope these questions left you with some brain children nibbles, and I hope you are doing well. So take care, my dear friends. Bye.